This cit-shakti, omnipotent consciousness, is free from the defect of objectivity. This is the defect of creating objects, creating notions of objects, external objects or internal objects. It is beyond being and non-being, though it is the reality in all being. It pervades all beings in the universe. It is the beauty in all. It is the light of all. You could say it is the life of all as well. It is the life of all. It is the essence of all forms and all modifications, yet it is beyond all these. At all times it is all in all. It is itself spread out as these 14 planes of existence. Even the notion concerning this universe is nothing but this omnipotent consciousness. False are the fragmented notions of pain and pleasure, for this omnipotent consciousness is omnipresent and infinite. That is the self when I am awakened. When I am deluded, that itself becomes the king. It's Suraghu, the king, that's talking here. And when he's deluded, it's the infinite consciousness which becomes the identity of Suraghu, the king. It is by its grace that the body, the mind, etc. function. It is by its power that everything in the whole universe dances to its tunes. How foolish of me to have experienced distress at having to bless and punish. I have been awakened. I have seen all that there is to be seen. I have attained all that is worth attainment. What are all these? Pain and pleasure, happiness and sorrow, blessing and punishment. All this is pervaded by Brahman. Where is the justification for grief and delusion? Who does what? It is but the infinite consciousness that exists. Salutations to you, O beautiful God. Salutations to the infinite self. There's a slightly disturbing thread to this story. Suraghu the king was unhappy or uneasy with the fact that he meted out punishments and rewards. It was part of his duty as the king. And he's now got it into such a perspective that he completely accepts this. He accepts that pain and pleasure are irrelevant from the perspective of the infinite Brahman. Are we to deduce from this that Suraghu goes back and happily gets on with meting out pleasures and punishments? I think this sort of teaching can be horribly misapplied. It almost promotes a kind of callousness, and it seems to be suggesting that there's an indifference here to the sufferings of others because it's all delusion. On the other hand, we often hear accounts that when this kind of knowledge, self-knowledge, is realized, compassion arises. And we would hope from the self-knowledge that Suraghu has realized that he will exercise compassion and not just simply carry on with the system, however brutal it might be, of punishments. He's got to carry on with his duties as king, but perhaps he'll be able to do it with wisdom and compassion. Because without wisdom and compassion, this kind of self-knowledge is useless. Worse than useless. It's almost like it's justifying any kind of atrocity by saying it's all delusion. So we must be very careful about that. In England, there was a famous Buddhist, he was called Christmas Humphries. He was the founder of the Buddhist Society in England, and a very prominent English Buddhist. But he was also a judge, a High Court judge. And he practiced his profession at a time when hanging was still legal in Britain. And he actually sentenced some people to death by hanging. It was one or two famous cases, I think, that were made into movies. So how did he reconcile this with his Buddhist beliefs? Buddhism is about non-violence, it's not about killing. There are precepts which explicitly prohibit this. Perhaps he thought he was just getting on with his job. There was a certain rule of law which had to be followed. But one would hope that he exercised compassion where he could, compassion and wisdom where he could. And I think it would be quite helpful if this was mentioned, and it actually is mentioned in the next chapter. Vasishta continued, by such inquiries Suraghu attained to the supreme state of consciousness. Never again did he grieve, but from that time onwards he performed his work, ever remaining in a balanced state of mind. Balanced state of mind. Compassionate, yet not uncontemptuous, not avoiding the pairs of opposites and not jealous, neither intelligent nor non-intelligent, neither motivated nor non-motivated. He lived with equal vision and inner calmness. So compassionate yet not uncontemptuous. Not uncontemptuous means contemptuous. So it says compassionate yet contemptuous. So how do we understand that? So he was compassionate. And yet, if punishment was clearly called for, he exercised it. I think that's how we have to understand it. We have to understand it. There's compassion, but if you're following the rule of law, then sometimes there's no choice but to follow it. You can maybe look for loopholes, you can maybe look for other interpretations, but there are times that you have to condemn, and this is what's meant by contemptuous, I think. Not avoiding the pairs of opposites and not jealous. So not avoiding the pairs of opposites. Normally we think of the enlightened mind as not engaging in duality. But if you're working as a judge or a king, you have to make decisions in terms of these opposites, whether it's guilty or not guilty or whatever. And not being jealous of, say, the state of the sage, which is outside of these affairs. But you've got a society, there have to be people in that society that have to make decisions, uncomfortable decisions, neither intelligent nor non-intelligent. And I think intelligence here could be related to the use of notions. You use notions when you need to. It's all very well to say in self-knowledge that you transcend all notions, but you're still going to have to come back to the world of notions, the notions which assume there's a self here which has got possessions and there's a world out there which that self interacts with. So you do that when you need to, and you drop it when you don't need to do it. Neither motivated nor non-motivated. In other words, you get on with what needs to be done. He had realized that all this is but the diverse manifestation of consciousness. He was therefore peaceful in both pain and pleasure, having attained to the fullness of understanding. So this is again a very interesting point. Pain is still there, but he wasn't making a drama about it. There'll be pain and discomfort. Pleasure's there, he's not getting lost in it, but he's not getting lost in the pain and discomfort either. Thus he ruled in this world for a considerable time, and then of his own accord discarded his body. He attained oneness with the infinite consciousness. O Ram, live and rule the world thus with an enlightened mind.